Okay, let's bring up Lieutenant Colonel Peter Glennon now, who's co-founder of Honor Flight in the greater Rochester area. Peter?
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Victor High School. Can everybody hear me? I don't know if I'm coming through on this. Let me begin by saying I love Victor. As you heard, I'm one of the co-founders. I'm the chairman of the board of directors of Honor Flight Rochester. We started in 2008. 6 of my friends and I, we wanted to get together and recognize these great men and women of the greatest generation, World War II and Korea. We wanted to express our appreciation for what they did during the war times and what they did when they came back home and building your schools and building your communities and building your businesses and your towns. And that's really taken off. And I can talk about Honor Flight all day, and I'm happy to do that if you'd like to. To date, we've flown 45 missions and 2,121 veterans from World War II and Korea. And let me tell you part of the reason why I love Victor so much, because we couldn't do it. Honor Flight could not do it with the great people in the greater town of Victor in this area. Every year, if you're not familiar, for the past 4 years, there's been Honor Flight Week here in Victor. And you guys have donated over $21,000 for our operation. So I thank you, and I thank your families and friends for all of that. Now, I'm going to go off my remarks a little bit here because I didn't know there were negative stereotypes of people joining the military. I joined when I was 17. I just retired this past May. I wasn't aware of that. Let me tell you, folks, more than 75% of age-eligible people, young folks today, are not eligible to join the military. They don't have the physical fitness, they don't have the health, they don't have their educational background. So when you hear people talk about veterans and military members being America's best and brightest, they're not puffing that up. The folks who get into the service, who are eligible and get in there, are America's best and brightest, and there's a ton of opportunity in there. And that's what I really want to talk about. I was 17. I was one of these folks in a small farm town down in the Hudson Valley, in New York, similar to Victor. I was looking around. Desert Storm, Desert Shield had come about. It was the first major conflict the United States had been in since Vietnam. There's a lot of patriotism in my hometown. There's a lot of military members. We've grown up. You'll see there's an article that was published I wrote last Memorial Day. We'll hand out to you at the end here. But I grew up around these folks who were veterans from World War II, Korea, Vietnam. They had served their country honorably. They came back to their town, and they really contributed to everything that we had, all of our successes. So here I was, 17 years old in a farm town. I had a lot of options. I did very well in school. I had a wonderful family that supported me. I did well with athletics. But I saw this Desert Storm going on. I saw a lot of my friends signing up to join the service. And I said, you know what? It's my time. I knew as a kid, when I was 7, 8 years old, going to our Memorial Day events in my town, listening to these veterans from World War II and Korea talking about how freedom is only one generation away from being lost, it struck me at that moment. I have to do my part. Now, several of my friends went and joined the Marine Corps. I mean, we need great people like John White. They came back from basic training and said, don't join the Marine Corps. So I joined the Air Force, 17, and everything I have today I owe to the military. I still joke that I'm the last person to join without any stripes. It's called a slick sleeve. You're enlisted, you go to basic training, you learn how to work together as a team. You're brought together with folks from all over this country, places I had never heard of, people I'd never even thought existed, with different cultures, different backgrounds. And at 17, we had to assimilate as a team. We had to learn to communicate and work together to accomplish whatever the goal was. The time of basic training, it was really to wax the floors and make sure that our underwear was folded properly in our locker. But I went on from there and I got involved with what's called avionics. I worked on all the weapons systems, on airplanes, weapons guidance, control, navigation systems. And it was a really neat time for me because I know today everybody has GPS on their phone. But back in the early 90s, there wasn't any GPS guiding cars or airplanes, not at all. In fact, I was one of 15 people throughout the Air Force who was selected based on our experience and knowledge to help invent and devise, I shouldn't say invent, but devise and incorporate all of the global positioning system, navigation systems, and weapons guidance systems throughout the Air Force. This little 17-year-old kid from a farm town. And there I was, flying all over the country. I flew into Europe to do this, to work with every different type of aircraft we had, to work with some of the leading electronic engineers from the big companies, from A-Ring to Lockheed to McDonnell Douglas. I didn't really realize at the time what an incredible opportunity that was for me. I was just having a lot of fun. But that actually opened up a lot of doors for me. There's a lot of job opportunities. People asked me to leave the military at that time to come work with those companies. I didn't want to. I was having too much fun. I'll move this along so we can get to the Q&A, but I ultimately was selected to be commissioned, so I ended up going to officer school, which is just like basic training all over again. And I rose up to become a squadron commander. I was selected to pilot C-5 aircraft. At that time, I decided I wanted to go to law school. I went to law school. I became a JAG officer. I ended up moving out this way and a transition from the full-time Air Force to the Air National Guard out in Niagara Falls. And I just retired in May, having a lot of fun. There's a lot for us to talk about here about transitioning those skill sets we learned in the military to what we do in the community. And I look forward to addressing any of those issues in questions. But one thing I want to mention before I relinquish this microphone. Your history teachers are here. I ask everybody to go chat with them and go do some investigation on your own. I'm very appreciative of Senator Funke and the school bringing us in, the History Channel doing this Take a Vet to School program, because it's important. It's important for people to understand who the veterans are, what the military does, not for us, we don't want the spotlight, but for the next generation. We need to ensure that the military is there to protect us going forward. And I tell you, I'm sure we've all heard stories about Vietnam, but there's a long history of veterans not being appreciated for their sacrifices. That goes back to the Revolutionary War. And this is where you can go speak with your history teachers. Right after the Revolutionary War, several of our soldiers weren't paid. So they went and surrounded Congress at the time in Philadelphia. The congressman slipped out, but ultimately the veterans were paid. This went on. There were no benefits for veterans coming back. They gave up their jobs, they gave up their businesses, they gave up their farms to go represent and serve our country. And they weren't treated fairly. Let me tell you, everybody's heard about Vietnam and those soldiers coming back. Go back and learn about something called the Bonus Army. After World War I, where several of our men and women who went overseas, the Great War, it was the first war where modern weapons of mass destruction were used, mustard gas and chlorine gas and trench warfare, horrific things that occurred. These folks came back from winning that war and there weren't a lot of jobs. They had lost a lot of money from the positions they had left. So there's a lot of discussion in the country about what can we do? How can we help them? Congress passed a bunch of laws saying, hey, let's give them a little bonus, let's give them a little extra money to help them out, let's try to help with some unemployment programs. 3 presidents vetoed it. Congress overrode it, so then they issued these certificates that were payable in 1945. It was 20 years after these men and women came back. They said, we'll give you some money in 20 years. Well, the Great Depression hit. I'm sure you've heard of it. 25,000 World War I veterans and their families marched on Washington and camped out for a month, asking for some of the money so they could provide for themselves. The military themselves, the police were first called in to move them out of the National Mall. 2 veterans were shot and killed. The Army then rolled in with 500 cavalry, 500 infantry, and they pushed the veterans out. Ultimately, the country came back, made good on the certificates. But my point is, not everybody knows that story. It's out there. And what we need to do today is recognize and appreciate the sacrifices that men and women today who join are really making for all of us. And so when you do see the NFL game this Sunday and you do see a salute to service, you stand up. I do. I really appreciate what every young man and woman does for us today. So I look forward to your questions. Thank you.